It doesn't sound like a good idea from where I'm standing, I have to say.
I'm sure it does
I'm not quite sure what else we can do.
They were only supposed to be passing through, but what Princess Anne and young Princess Charlotte stumbled upon in Queen Camilla's private room may be the most shocking royal secret since Diana's final days. It started like any other casual stroll through the palace until they entered that room. Now look, we all know these royal palaces are massive. Dozens of rooms, endless corridors, hidden nooks. You could get lost in there for hours. But on this day, Princess Anne and little Princess Charlotte weren't exactly exploring. They were just dropping by Queen Camilla's quarters for what was supposed to be a quick, routine visit. Nothing fancy, just a little family catch-up. Camilla wasn't there, by the way. She had stepped out for an official engagement. So, Anne, being the no-nonsense let's keep moving type, figured they'd wait a few minutes before heading out. But Charlotte, she's curious. She's a Windsor through and through, but she's also just a kid, and like most kids, if you put them in a quiet, elegant room filled with antiques, heavy curtains, and fancy furniture, they're gonna poke around a bit. And that's when it happened. Behind a tall silk room divider, one of those real old-school hand-painted ones, Charlotte notices this chest. Not just any chest. We're talking old, decorative, with those golden hinges and tiny floral carvings. The kind of thing you'd expect to find filled with pearls or royal medals or something flashy. But nope, what Charlotte pulled out wasn't jewelry or some royal heirloom, it was something far more haunting. Inside the chest was this small velvet pouch. Faded, worn around the edges. You could tell it had been handled, maybe even cherished or hidden. Inside that pouch, a single sealed envelope. Now here's where things get real. This envelope wasn't labeled like you'd expect. No crest, no official seal, it was handwritten. And the name on it? Francis Shand Kydd. If that name doesn't ring a bell immediately, don't worry, you're not alone. But Princess Anne? She knew exactly who it was. Frances was Princess Diana's mother. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. So, just to paint the picture, Anne is holding a letter addressed to Diana's mom, hidden away in Camilla's personal quarters, wrapped in velvet, tucked in a chest no one was meant to open. That's not nothing. Now, if you're wondering, okay, but how do we know it's that serious? Well, here's the thing. Royal protocol is no joke. Personal letters, especially anything related to Diana, aren't just left lying around. Anything that emotional or controversial would have been burned, sealed in archives, or locked away. So the fact that this was still there, hidden but not destroyed, that says someone didn't want it found but also couldn't bring themselves to erase it. But what was inside the letter left both Anne and Charlotte silent, and that silence said everything. The letter was raw. We're talking pages of handwritten thoughts, no filter, no fluff. Frances was pouring out everything she'd witnessed watching Diana spiral inside the royal system. She talked about the loneliness, the betrayal, the way the firm, the actual institution pushed Diana into a corner emotionally. She even described moments where Diana would call her in tears, just desperate to escape what she called a palace of pressure. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Frances didn't just point fingers at the system. She made it very clear that Camilla wasn't some passive bystander in all this. In fact, Frances suggests Camilla played a much bigger role in Diana's emotional unraveling than we've ever been told.
I think the one I enjoyed reading more than anything else.
Now, to be fair, we do know Diana famously called her the third person in the marriage, so this isn't coming out of nowhere. But what's shocking is that Frances goes even deeper. She hints at private meetings, manipulation behind closed doors, and a level of influence Camilla had over Charles that apparently started way before the public ever knew about it. If true, that completely changes the narrative we've been fed for years. So let's pause right there. At this point, Anne is staring at this letter in her hand, probably wondering why it was hidden, how long it had been there, and what else Queen Camilla might be keeping quiet. And Charlotte? She's young, but she knows enough to realize this wasn't just some dusty old note. This was a ticking time bomb from the past. But here's the question that's rattling everyone behind palace walls. Why was this letter in Camera's private room? Seriously, think about it. The royal family doesn't just toss sensitive stuff like this into a drawer. Important letters? Anything tied to Diana? That goes straight to the royal archives under lock, key, and layers of security. It's handled like history, not bedtime reading. writing. So for something this personal to be hidden in Queen Camilla's room, that's not just odd, that's intentional. Now, we gotta ask, was Camilla keeping it for herself? Maybe as a form of protection or control? Like, imagine if this letter ever came to light. Maybe it paints her in a very unflattering light. Maybe it's a version of Diana's story that contradicts the polished royal narrative we've been fed for years. And let's be honest, Camilla's image makeover over the last 2 decades has been massive. From the other woman to queen consort, that didn't happen overnight. It took careful PR, media management, and maybe a little bit of damage control behind the scenes. Now here's where things get even messier. There are whispers, nothing official, but enough to make people raise eyebrows, that Camilla might have gotten her hands on this letter after Diana's death. Like, it could have been among Diana's private things, maybe Camilla kept it to keep it from ever becoming public. Now, of course, we can't say that's 100% confirmed, but do the royals ever really confirm anything unless they're forced to? Nah. And the fact that this letter was not where it was supposed to be, that alone makes you wonder.
We've been very lucky. My mother was the queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for. And he's probably spent more time thinking about it.
So naturally, Princess Anne's reaction to all this was one of those wait a minute moments. Anne's the type who lives and breathes royal protocol. No drama, no leaks, do the duty, keep it moving. But even she was visibly shaken. You could see it in the way she handled the letter, carefully, like it was radioactive. Now remember, Anne is loyal to the crown, always, but this might have hit a little too close to home. According to a source close to the palace, Anne didn't make a scene. She didn't run straight to Charles. She just quietly alerted a senior advisor. Within hours, the letter was taken from Camilla's quarters and moved to a secure location, probably under royal security protocols. And here's the kicker, there are whispers that before she handed it over, Anne may have taken a photo of the letter, just in case. No proof of that, of course, but in this family, insurance policies come in all forms. Now let's talk about Charlotte, because this moment wasn't just about history or scandal. It was about how the next generation sees it. Charlotte might not fully understand the gravity of what she stumbled on, but kids are sharp. That night, she asked her mom about Diana, but it wasn't just who she was. Charlotte said something that stuck with people. Why would someone hide something about someone they say they loved? Let that sink in. It's innocent, it's honest, but it hits hard. Because that's the kind of question adults tend to avoid, but kids, they just say it. And word is, Kate was really moved by that, maybe even shaken. Because here's the thing, if the next generation is already asking those kinds of questions, maybe the truth won't stay buried forever. Maybe they won't just accept the royal version of events. Maybe they'll dig. And honestly, that might be what the firm is most afraid of, because if Charlotte's already connecting the dots, imagine what she'll ask next.
We have reports from Paris that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident and that her partner, Dodi Fayed, has also been killed. They were apparently being pursued by paparazzi on 2 motorcycles.
It's been nearly 30 years since Diana's tragic death, but moments like this remind us her spirit has never really left Buckingham Palace. And honestly, it hasn't. Because every time something like this pops up, a hidden letter, a whispered memory, everything comes flooding back. And now with this discovery, that quiet scrutiny, it's heating up again. Not in headlines just yet, but behind palace walls, people are talking. Advisors, staff, even family members. Because if this letter really says what they say it says, it changes everything. Now the question is, what will the royals do with this truth? Bury it again or finally confront it? We already know how the royal machine usually handles these kinds of things. Containment. Lock it up, don't talk, pretend it didn't happen. A few sources say that's exactly what aides are already pushing for. Just quietly file the letter away and pretend it was never found. But there's a big problem this time. Charlotte knows. And Anne isn't the type to just let something like this go, not when it hits this close to home.
He made efforts to be there, and particularly, I think, on a regular basis at bedtime. At that degree of continuity, when you're not going to be around all the time, that there are some periods when you need to have continuity. And that was one of them, and that was one which could make a real impact. I mean, bedtime stories are things that, children probably don't get so much nowadays, but it was very important in my day.
So the big question is, can they really keep it hidden now? Or are we just one whisper away from this thing going public? Maybe through a leak, maybe through a friend of a friend. We've seen it before. When stuff is too sensitive, it has a funny way of making its way to the press. And if that happens, you can bet this story won't just be a royal rumor. It'll be a full-blown reckoning. Some secrets are meant to be kept, but some are meant to be uncovered. And this one, it just might change everything. Now, we want to hear your thoughts on this because this story's far from over. Do you think Camilla intentionally hid that letter, or was it something more complicated? And should the royal family finally open up about the pain Diana carried all those years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everything. And if you're into these behind-the-scenes royal reveals, hit that like button and subscribe because there's a lot more to uncover.